So you're in sales now, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you sell?
So we do a lot of different things. We do a lot of business consulting, helping entrepreneurs grow and scale their companies, um, personal type stuff as well. That kind of goes on with that, obviously, because a lot of personal issues sometimes leap into the business, which causes business problems. So we kind of do a little bit of both, but mainly what we do is helping scale companies from the beginning all the way to if they need to exit. We've done a couple of exits last year. We did that 7 different ones, a lot of them for 9 and one for 10. So.
Nice, nice. And so how did you go from the NFL to sales?
Honestly, man, I fell into it. It was I got into insurance first. Was one of the first kind of sales things I did. I had a mentor of mine that basically got me connected. I walked in for an interview, and he's like, "Hey, I'm buying this other company, and I want you to run it." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Why not? Got to get licensed and go from there." And that's where it started, and then just kind of led into it. Then I like the upside of it, right? There's not necessarily I can't sit behind a desk and like know that there's no more than what I'm doing currently is out there, right? So it's like I'm just sitting there and I'm like, dang, I can't. Even if I did more work, I couldn't make any more. I was like, well, what am I doing the extra work for, right? Like I couldn't get my mind around it. And sales was kind of the way where it's like, okay, cool, you get paid for what you do. Let's go kind of make that happen. So that's kind of how I got into it.
I feel like that's how a lot of people get into sales or entrepreneurship is it's like, you're at a standard job and it's like you have your limit. Like for me, I was working in a warehouse and it's like I worked my ass off for a year there every day, didn't call in sick once. I smashed every goal they gave me and I got a dollar raise after a year. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm
Yep.
good. I don't like that.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about your NFL career.
Yeah, man. So I played a couple different teams. It was a lot of fun. Had a good time. I ended up getting hurt toward the end of it. That's why I transitioned into business. But yeah, I spent some time with Vikings, Eagles, and Giants primarily.
Nice. Yeah, I was back when I watched NFL, I was a Vikings fan, so that's pretty
Oh,
cool.
nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. It's cold up there, but it's nice in the summers. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. So with the NFL, how does that work? How did that go? Did you get approached?
Yeah, so I went from college, obviously from there, at pro day and all the different, coaches come out and teams and send out their people. We had I think we had almost 28, 29 of the teams at our pro day, which was great, turnout. And then, yeah, you go from there and you go into the draft and then the draft goes into it. Then you go to all the next steps. Kind of laid out for you, which is nice. And they kind of come to you and you get an agent, agent has the conversations and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds fun. It's nice that it's laid out and stuff and it's not confusing because I feel like if you're the football player, you just want to focus on getting good at football, being better, and you don't want to have to focus about I guess you could say nerd side of things. So,
Exactly.
but back to sales, here's a big thing that people that are going to get into sales, they think is a big roadblock for them mentally is how do you handle a no?
Yeah. You're asking me?
Yeah, yeah. How do you handle a no? Like
Well,
from
I think
when you first
yeah,
started sales versus now, how do you handle it?
I think the big thing with sales and like handling no's and stuff like that is a couple different reasons or a couple different things. If you're getting a no, then you probably haven't addressed all of their concerns, or you're just trying. Most of the time, if you're getting to a no, then you haven't heard them long enough to understand what they need. And if it's a no, then I'm not going to force it from the standpoint either this like it's not for you, which ultimately is not really them telling you no, it's you telling them no because the product's not right for them,
Mm.
right? So it's either that or the other side of things is you're not necessarily listening to what they really need, and you're trying to just sell them a product maybe that you have versus giving them what they need. Because sometimes you need to help them get to something first, then your product comes in and helps them finish out the rest, right? So like
Yeah.
there's kind of phases of it. Because the answer is usually never no. It's either not right now. It's usually how it should be if your product's that good. And that's ultimately the goal, right? So just kind of creating that. So it's really addressing and listening, versus just kind of staying on what people do is basically stay on autopilot and they'll just like basically read off their paper and be like, whoa, all right, yes or oh no, okay, cool. Let me read my objection handle. Like, and there's not ever, they're not listening, essentially, is what I would say.
They're not people, they're robots.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the biggest hack you would say in sales?
Well, knowing your product, number one. If you already know that, then I think the second one is you have to listen. 'Cause if you're not listening, then you have to, in order to be in order to be understood, you have to first understand. And the only way you can understand is if you listen to them, understand where they are, understand what they're saying, understand what they're trying to tell you their issue is. And if you're not listening, you're not going to know what the real issue is. And therefore, when you have time to talk, you won't be understood because you didn't first understand. So it's like, we all try to basically like, here, if you just understand what I'm trying to tell you, then you'll get it and then you'll figure it out. That's what we try to do. But most of the time it doesn't work because if I'm buying something, I want you to know that why I'm even reaching out to you is because of XYZ. I wanted to do this. I want to do this. And after you've listened to all that, and you're like, yeah, I could totally do it. This is how we're going to do it. I'm like, okay, cool. How much does it cost? Like, that's really how easy it can be. But most of us are like, oh, let me just show you all the cool features. Like, but I don't even care about half those. I just want this one.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of what I would say is that's the hack. But it really comes down to you gotta care about the actual client,
Yeah,
honestly.
that's for me. I run an AI automation
Okay.
business. And so I know for me, like when I started sales, I would focus too much on, oh, I can make $1,000 off this person. I can make X amount of money, da 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 da. Focus on the money as opposed to how can I help this business make more money? Because the more money I make them, the more money I'm going to make because they're going to see me as more value.
Yep.
And I think that is just the most important thing for sure, is just, like you said, understanding your product and what it can do for the individual that you're working with, not just a broad spectrum of, well, it does this. Now, what can it do for that person? So, yeah. What is the craziest story you have from your journey, whether it be NFL, sales, or just personal?
Crazy in what way?
Just something that it's going to make people just kind of be like, whoa, what the?
I mean, it depends, man. I've had a lot of cool stuff happen, obviously, with sports and stuff like that, things I got to do. Um, I mean, guys that I got to play with were guys I played with in video games growing up. Like, to me in that moment, the first couple of times, I was like, dang, this is crazy, right? And then getting to do some things that I couldn't even pay to do now because we got to do just through the connections of being a professional athlete, right? Um, and then being a part of some businesses, helping them grow and scale, sell, all the way to that whole process of, seeing how they made millions of dollars almost what seemed like in under a year, which I had no idea what was going to happen. Like watching that. Like there's a lot of cool things I would say is pretty cool from that standpoint. So it's hard to answer. I guess it depends on what direction, but that's some of the stuff I would say off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that is the coolest thing is like when you said that you would grow up playing video games and you'd be playing with these characters and then you're meeting the real people or you're playing with the real people. That's pretty cool. That's something that it's just like they are just people, but they're in a video game. You're playing with them. It's like a childhood thing coming true. So that's pretty cool. What was the biggest mistake or failure throughout your career?
If I could go back, I'll answer it this way. If I go back like to a time frame that I was in college and going through all of that stuff with sports, because that's kind of the route you have to take in order to go to the NFL and the sport that I'm in, or was in, is I was always into somewhat into business. I knew that was kind of fascinating, the finances of things and building stuff, but I wish I would have literally leaned in so much heavier in that time frame when I didn't really have to make any money. I didn't have to do anything. All I had was to show up for practice and stay focused. I wish I had leaned in so heavy, like gone in every free moment I had to meet with, business owners in the area, meet with, alumni that were dominating. Like Zoom really wasn't a thing back then quite yet, but if it like finding ways to almost be like, cool, like I'd love to just hop on. And a lot of those alumni would hop on with me because I'm an athlete at their alma mater, right? Like leaning into that and getting a massive head start on it would be something I'd go back and be like, okay, cool, that would definitely be a success. That's all in hindsight, but I think that would probably be something I would change. And I wonder because, right, like at that time, sports was like the main focus. Nothing else distracted me. I made sure I had good grades, but that was pretty much it. And then I'd focus on sports every other moment. And that helped me get to the level I played at. But if I'm going back and I was able to keep all those things, I would have definitely and added that to my days, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long have you been doing the sales then?
Let's see. Got into insurance in 2018. 2018. No, yeah, 2019, end of 2018, 2019. Yeah.
How did COVID kind of affect that?
Thankfully, during that time, I was still in insurance, which basically it didn't really affect us. In fact, people wanted to make sure that that was in place. So just because that's where a lot of people were staying, right? It's like if something happens to my house, man, where am I going to go? Or things like that. They insured. Essentially, they wanted to make sure they had access and had it covered roughly because there's nowhere else to go. So it ended up being okay with us, for us in that time frame. And outside of like people like, at that point, insurance too, like you can't necessarily control rates. So it wasn't really for us. It wasn't a huge, we didn't have a massive effect. In fact, we kind of grew a little bit during COVID. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thinking about it now, that makes a lot of sense that people, they're in their house and makes them think about it more and they have more free time to think about it also. So
correct. Yeah, they
yeah.
weren't going anywhere.
Yeah. So how did you transition into what you're selling now?
Um, Honestly, it came out from a conversation that I had with a guy at my lab. I'm not sure if you know who he is or not. Basically, it's big time, influencer business guy. Very, very smart. And I was talking to him, and he was in a whole different field. And I was asking, like, man, like, I'll move anywhere. I could do insurance pretty much anywhere, anyway. And I was just trying to, like, I just want to be around the top 1% of people. I just want to be around, the people that understand it, not just in one industry. I wanted to be around somebody that understood in multiple industries, that were like doing it and killing it. And, obviously all the different apps, like it'd be real estate, but it'd be other industries outside of insurance, which is what I knew. And then kind of seeing how they were able to stay at that level and have their hands in a bunch of different things. And so that's kind of what I was looking for. And it's like, man, I'll just follow you around or anybody that you know. I just want to learn business at a very, very high level and how you operate there. And that's kind of how I got into the role that I'm now, because he connected me to the guy that I'm with now at Apex with Ryan. And because I was here in Dallas and he was literally like, yeah, check and see if Ryan is still doing what he's doing out in Dallas. And I reached out to him through a DM. One thing led to the next, conversations, and then have been here since. So that's kind of how it happened.
How has it kind of impacted how you work or how you see things to be surrounded by more of the 1% type people?
It changes everything. I think environment's literally everything. I talk about it a lot, actually, as far as how, I mean, even from the sports, I'd walk into the locker room, any new team I was with, and I'd go find the guys that were Hall of Famers. I'd go find the guys that were, had been on, they were just made the Pro Bowl. I see all those guys and I would get around them because obviously they're doing something right within that organization, which the coaches respect, like, and they last that long. So I'd go around and create an environment for myself, doing things that are very similar to them. Started all the way in sports. And then it went into business, same thing situation. If I'm around those people, ultimately what's going to happen is I'm going to find ways, I'm going to find strategies. I'm going to like the way they think is going to basically bleed off on how I think. And then that's leading to their certain success. So for me, it's everything. I'm always trying to find myself in the right environment that helps me continue to keep facilitating that growth. Because if not, we're bound as human nature just to get complacent with what we are, to create sure that we're comfortable, to make sure that, that we're all good and we won't expand. And then ultimately over time, 10 years pass you by, like, dang, I haven't expanded at all. And you're like, well, I wish I would have had that back. Right. So like environment definitely is key. Not only just for that, but also too for relationships, right? If you get around a bunch of different people that are all killing the game of what they do, and they can introduce you to somebody, they can introduce you, and then all of a sudden, like you have access to could be almost anything you need because you put yourself in an environment that has that. The worst thing I think is a lot of times the reason that we are confine ourselves in a lot of spaces where like we don't have, let's just call it poverty mindset. A lot of times it's a poverty environment is usually where it comes, right? Because it's not the lack of something, it's the lack of use. Sometimes it could be information, it could be lack of resources, which can come from relationships, it could be lack of, you name it, right? It's a lack of something. And I think environment helps facilitate it. Just like, I mean, look at nature, right? Like if you're in a freaking desert, you're not going to grow any trees. Like it's just not the case. But if you're over in, let's call it Montana, and you got trees and it's beautiful in the summers or wherever, or Minnesota in the summer. I mean, it's facilitated for growth, right? And so that's what you want to do, the same thing for yourself.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That environment is the most important thing because I know, like, for me personally, when I was working my 9 to 5, I would look at, let's say, $1,000. I'd look at $1,000 and be like, that's pretty good money. I mean, that's not bad. Okay, cool. I
Yeah.
am inside a community now where you can watch people just make $1,000 a day, and you're like, oh shit, $1,000 really isn't that much at all. And then you start seeing that with bigger and bigger numbers. So it kind of drives you to get more money. And then it can work the same with fitness and stuff too, where you see people that are way bigger. And sometimes that can be bad depending on your mindset. If you're poverty mindset, like you said, where you kind of get that greed, envy, not greed, envy is the word. And you just kind of get jealous and bitter. But if you look at it from the right perspective, I mean, you're going to grow, you're going to benefit from it. And the people is the most important part of the environment for sure. Because I talked to this one guy that on an interview like this, and he said he's the Henry Ford of his industry. He's like, I can't do it all, but I got a phone that can call anybody that can. And he's very, very successful in his field. So environment is huge for sure. And I think just going out there and trying to find the best people in the industry that you're in is going to just skyrocket you. You can go from being new in a industry, can't English, to just skyrocketing in that so quickly and passing all the people that are just doing their day-to-day things and have that poverty mindset. It's huge. So one of my last questions for you is, what's the most amount of money you've made in a single year?
I made a good amount. I'll just say that.
Just say that. All right. I like it. Then my last question is, if somebody is going out there to try to chase their dream, their passion, what is your one piece of advice you would give them?
I get asked this question a lot. And I'm trying to think of a different answer than what I give typically. I'll go kind of in line with what we talked about so far. So there's steps to success and there's steps to excellence, in my opinion. And the first step of that is imitation. And so going in alignment with environment, you're imitating what you're around, right? So that's why environment is really important. And the reason imitation is first is because you don't know what it looks like until you do, right? And so if the first steps to excellence are me learning how to do something, the first thing I'm going to do nowadays is look on Google, try to imitate either the knowledge and information. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to try to figure out how to do it, whether I'm building something, whatever it may be, or I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to watch them do it. I'm imitating something until I gain the skill myself, and then I'm going to innovate from there, right? And then now like when I start innovating, now I start separating myself from everybody else, and that's where I start getting to the excellence piece where you get known for what you're doing. But if you never get to a place where, or you're not in a place where you get to imitate something you want to actually imitate, then that's where you get stuck, right? So I would say get into a place or space around people in which you actually want to imitate some pieces of their life. It doesn't have to be everything because not everybody's perfect, but if there's an area of their life, oh, they're great with relationships. Okay, I'm going to imitate that form of his life. Okay, they're great with finances. I'm going to imitate that. Oh, he's great on the stage. I'm going to imitate that. He's great in business. I'm going to imitate. And fill up your life with things that you want to imitate, and then literally spend time developing those things and allow you're able to become that. And then so ultimately, when you start getting that space, you'll be able to innovate. And then ultimately someone's going to actually try to replicate what you have. Right.
Yeah.
And then now you get to a space where you have, like you talked about the guy with the Henry Ford of his industry, like people are going to want to have relationships with you. They're going to be the ones trying to imitate you, which facilitates a whole other environment. Right. So like, but you have to start with, most of us try to just jump to the last thing. Usually has to start with imitation, whether it be reading a book, whether it be whatever it may be. Getting that is going to be critical to any type of success, no matter what field, no matter what industry, does not matter what you do, you first will have to do that. Otherwise, people will be imitating you and you're probably not asking that question.
I like that. I like the imitate people until you can innovate. And that's the thing that a lot of people that want to do that kind of get this imposter syndrome thing, which I don't really understand. I've never felt it personally, but I maybe some people are. I think that when people say they feel the imposter syndrome, it's them not really trying. I don't think you can feel like an imposter if you're imitating. I think if you're just
I think a lot of time what it comes down to is, and I talk about this a lot too. So is one, when people say, man, I feel like I'm an imposter. I'm like, have you lied? And
Yeah.
usually the answer is no. So then why do you feel like you're not yourself? Right? Because that's what imposter is, meaning like you don't feel like what you're doing or how you're acting is actually like who you are. Well, like, well, have you lied about who you are? Have you told people you're something and you're not? And if the answer is no, then we shouldn't feel that way. Reason like rationally, right?
Yeah.
Now, what ends up happening usually the imposter syndrome, it's not necessarily that it's more of it's obviously an insecurity usually, but when we can create logic around that insecurity, it helps us like look through past the emotion that comes with it to be like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. It's like someone saying like you're out of shape and you're actually in shape. Well, like you wouldn't let the emotion of you feeling bad about your body affect you if you knew that you were in, like, right? Like there's little things like that that you would just know once you kind of put pen to paper, right?
Yeah.
But the ultimate goal of it is like the imposter syndrome really only applies or really like you has actual rationales if you've lied about something and you're trying to hold it and not let people know. That's really when you only should feel it, in
Right.
all honesty. Now, how most people feel it is because they're in a room or they're in a space in which they're not comfortable in, and the feeling that they're feeling, like they attach a meaning of imposter, and it's not imposter. It's just something that's uncomfortable, and maybe it's usually something that's new, and that's what they're feeling. But they have the imposter syndrome, and they say, "Oh, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I don't feel like I'm successful enough. I don't feel like I'm good enough to actually do this." Well, like, did you say that you're the best in the world? Did you say that no one else can do it better? Like, no. But the reality is, if you have to understand, is that going back to if people are going to replicate something, everybody starts on step one. You may be on step three. You may be looking at people who are on step 20. And so you look like an imposter to someone that's at step 20,
Yeah.
but to the person that's on step one, you're definitely not an imposter. They like actually value your opinion and they value what you've taught them from step one to get to where your level is. So there's always levels to what you're doing because it's very easy if we live by the definition of how most people view imposter, that will always feel like an imposter no matter how successful. If you're Jeff Bezos, because someone's going to be more successful in certain area than Jeff Bezos, oh, I feel like an imposter in this area. Well, that's not real, right? Like, unless you're lying and saying you're better than that individual, or you're saying you've got it all figured out, or you're saying that whatever you have. So like that's where we can get very, very confused. And then we'll stop as soon as we say, oh, I'm an imposter. Boom. We just cut all action off. We stop doing it. We think we're not qualified. Maybe it's not for me. And that's usually where everything dies, right? But if we can kind of walk through the logic of, okay, wait, what does that actually mean? There's Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. In life, we attach meanings to different feelings, emotions, all types of stuff. And that is really probably the most important skill that we have to also learn. Because if an analogy he gives, using because a lot of people are afraid of public speaking, and the feelings, there's two types of people. You have one person who is deathly afraid of speaking on stage. You have another person who's like a rock star who loves the stage, right? He's like, he loves the attention. It's great. They both feel the same things. For example, person that's afraid to go on stage, palms sweating,
Yep.
their heart is like beating really fast. They get butterflies in their stomach. They kind of can't sit still. They're kind of moving. Like, I don't know and then their meaning, right, is okay, doesn't feel comfortable. This is not right. This is not right for me. Why am I feeling this way? This is probably not how everybody else feels. Blah, blah, blah. And they go down this whole rabbit trail of what unqualifies them to be able to do it. On the flip side, you have the guy that performs all the time, is the best at what he does. He gets butterflies. His hands start sweating. He can't sit still. His heart's racing. And his meaning is, I'm freaking ready. Get me out there. Let's go. They feel the exact same physical responses, but the internal dialogue of what a meaning they attach to it, drastically different. They
Right.
also get a drastically different result, right? And so a lot of times that attaching what is actually real and what is actually not is very, very important for performance in any field, whether you're a musician or you're playing on the field as an NFL athlete. It doesn't how the meaning of it is what really comes down to the most important piece to it, which goes right into feeling like an imposter. What meaning am I attaching to that feeling that I'm feeling that makes me think I'm an imposter? That we got to attach a different meaning.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because that's actually, I used to have super bad social anxiety after COVID. And that's what I used to kind of get over it. I would get all palm sweaty, heart racing, butterflies. And I just told myself, I'm like, I'm excited. I'm excited. That's why. Like I'm so jittery. Let's go. I just want to go. And so that's how I got over it. I changed it from anxiety to excitement, and it worked amazingly. But there's also attaching the meaning to the feeling is a big thing too with stress. Cause I know they've done a study and they took very highly stressed people, and half of them thought that stress was really good for them. They performed well under stress. And then half of them didn't. They thought it was horrible for them. They thought it was killing them. And the people that thought it was horrible were dying faster. And the people that thought it was good for them, they were super successful, super healthy. It was great. And they had cortisol in their blood still. They were still stressed out. It's just the perception of how you look at it. And the fact that not only does it affect your performance, not only does it affect how you feel, it also affects your health, which is a crazy thing that your mind is just so powerful that it can affect all of that. So having the right perception of those feelings is super important. I agree completely.
100%, man. And like, there's obviously there's the sparks or parts of it where certain levels of stress and people have things that are real, right? And there's things that they have to deal with that are a little bit harder than just, attaching a meaning to it. Like there is definitely that part of it for sure. Like that's not going to say that's part of it, but I think regardless of if that is part of it or not, the underlying theme of attaching positive meanings to certain things goes regardless of whatever the chemical things are and chemical imbalances inside your body are, right? And so I think it's a skill set regardless of what we should have, no matter what, or no matter what we're facing from an internal standpoint. But yeah, I think viewing things, it goes back to like what where it says like be grateful, right? It's like it sounds so simple, but it's really not just about, oh, I'm gonna think of like things that are, I'm grateful for this piece of paper right here. Like it's not really about that. It's about truly believing what you're saying. Because it's taking your mind off of what you could see as negative, right? Because if I'm constantly walking around, it's like, oh, this room sucks, right? And I'm talking about, I look at all the different things in this office. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like all the things I don't like. Every time I walk in here, I'm going to see everything I don't like. And I'm like, this sucks. Now, someone comes in here that's never had an office before, comes in here and like, dude, this is freaking sick. I love, you have this much space. You have this over here. They see completely different. How they walk in, how they feel in here is completely different than what I would feel, but it's all based upon what they're seeing. Right. And so that's really what we have to open our eyes up to is like when we're being grateful, it's not necessarily like I have to falsify my belief in something. It's I have to open up my eyes to see it from a space of how I could be or something I'm missing. The same way that a lot of times we do it for others, we don't do it for ourselves very well. It's like, oh, they're going through a hard time. Okay, cool. Think about this. Like this would be, and this is the great side of it. And we can easily find it for somebody else, but for ourselves, we don't ever like remove the thing from our eyes and open up that space to see what that is. And ultimately that's a little superpower because we're more resourceful in a space like that because we get to see everything, right? It's literally removing things from our eyes to be able to see the whole picture,
Yep.
which usually what emotion does is it tunnels you down into one particular thing. And then you're going to feel that feeling until hopefully it stops or you find something else to think about or whatever happens and blah, 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 right? Like that, but that's what happens is most of our time goes directly internal like this. And so when we can remove that, it literally does the same thing. It opens back up our gaze to that. Same thing in there's a lot of studies too. Like if you're sitting in, I think it happened in COVID that did it. But if you're sitting in a room, you're not outside, you can't see anything, you can't see the horizon, and you're locked in on a computer screen, for example, and your eyes are fixated here, for a long period of time, your brain starts to get fatigued and you can't focus. And people sit there like forever, like, I can't focus. I'm falling asleep and do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What they tell you to do is they literally tell you to go either outside or look through a window and look at the horizon. But you don't have to have like an actual horizon, but like look at to the sky where you have a different parallel, like where you're at. Because what it does is it opens back up your gaze because your eyes get so fixated on one thing for too long. Literally the muscles get fatigued and your brain starts to maybe get headaches. You start falling asleep and you can't focus anymore. The reason is it's a sight problem, right? So it's just one like similar things. Our bodies operate that same way internally versus out.
Yeah, I like what you say about our brains just like to fixate on an emotion, and that's all they can focus on. It's just looking at a certain situation through the lens of that emotion. And I think a super powerful thing to do is detach you from your body and just look at your situation from an external point of view and see what advice would you give to you. Like you said, we can kind of help other people, but we can't help ourselves. That humans are great at that for some reason. So if you
Yeah.
can detach yourself from yourself, and what advice would you give to you if it wasn't you, basically? And that's probably what you need to do. Or another way of looking at it is if you're religious, looking at it from what would God want me to do? what
Yep.
would, or if you're not religious or you want to look at it from a different point of view, what would an idol that you look up to what say I should do right now? And looking at it from that point of view also, like you're probably going to find exactly what you have to do and you'll do it. So,
100%.
all right, man.
I mean, how can I help you, man? What's going on? What do you got going on? I know we talked a little bit from little interviews aspect, but I know I see a top right, like time left, 7 minutes or whatever on there.
Yeah.
How can I help you? What do you got going on? All that kind of stuff.
Well, I am a content creator with my family, my dad primarily, and we do comedy skits on social media and we're pumping out tons of content on that, just hammering those out 8 to 12 videos a day. And I started this podcast to kind of gain knowledge and become super knowledgeable as well as grow another income stream in the future as it gets bigger. And I have my AI business that I sell AI services and I work 16, 18-hour days, just constantly working. I don't know. That's me. I work
Love it, man. Well, how can I help you?
with,
Anything.
I don't know. I don't know. Do you know a good video editor?
We've got a few actually in our network that we do have. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, but we do have a couple that we do because we do some obviously some content and stuff like that for other companies that we work with. And it kind of depends on what your look feel. Like so all the content creator stuff, it does determine look feel. They all have their own like unique style, right? And if the style fits with what your style wants to be, then great, it's a great match. Sometimes it's like, okay, cool, you're great for that, but not really good for that. Keep doing your thing, you're good at what you do, but just doesn't fit with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different people we have. It just kind of depends on what like your look, feel, and persona and stuff like that you're wanting to give off as well.
Yeah, because I think honestly, my only problem that I have, like big enough that I need to try to tackle it, is I run out of time. I I work constantly and there's only so many hours that I can put in because
What does most of your time look like? Like, what do you do most of the time?
I jump between my AI business, my podcasting, and the guy stuff constantly, just bouncing between those, hitting different tasks all day long. I just each night and in the mornings, I'll write down everything I need to do for the day and I'll just bounce in between them. Okay, this one's the highest leverage thing. Just bouncing in between them all. Just work, 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 work.
What have you ever done a time audit on the have you like the time buckets? Have you ever done that before?
No.
So I would challenge you to do a time audit. Basically you can do it for a week or 2 weeks, doesn't matter, but basically dialing out like from Monday to Sunday or whatever it may be from time frames you work on, whether it be 15 and 30-minute increments on what the full day is. And the reason you do this is because the time buckets, there's a dollar, 10, 100,
Mm.
1,000, whatever tasks that you're doing every single day, and filling up which of your days fill that up, right? So let's say in 2 weeks, what I'll find with a lot of business owners is they're doing, of that week, they're doing 30% of their time is spent on $10 like tasks that they're doing.
Mm.
And then, another 40% of their time is spent on $100 tasks. And they're CEOs of companies. And then they have literally 20% of their time focusing on 1,000 or more, which is where most of their time should be spent.
Right.
Right. So then when I look at that, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, so your whole week was basically spent. If you were to pay yourself for your hours, you'd only be worth $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the? Like, I can pay a lot more than that. Yeah, but you're giving all of your time away. Like if you're a $50,000 employee. And so what ends up happening is you could, for some of the stuff you're doing, when you write all that stuff out and look at all that, I mean, there's virtual assistants nowadays that can do easy stuff for you. Once you document it all out, you're already making the content. Just, put on a Loom video, record the screen, tell you exactly how you do it. And they could train and they could really do that time and take away 4 hours of what your normal tasks may be that they could easily replicate. Right.
Mm.
And so now all of a sudden you're getting 4 hours back to focus on something that can make you $1,000 versus 100 or 10. Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but when you have it all laid out, then you can like literally pinpoint, oh, like that actually, I should not be doing it. Can I find someone to replace me doing that? And I could pay them $8 an hour to do that.
Right.
Well, that's a great business decision, right? Stuff like that. So I would challenge you to do it, and just see where your time's going. Because most of the times what we do, and I mean, I constantly have to re-engineer myself too, because as you start leveling up, $100 may be $10 to me on my tasks,
Yeah.
right? Like, well, I need to focus on $30,000 tasks. Well, cool. Well, when I start, I had to move from 10 to the next and the next and next, and then now I'm constantly offloading. Going to get to a point like I need to hire a COO. Oh, I need to hire a CEO. I need, like, you start getting to those level tasks because you're like, hey, like this needs to get done in order for me to continue doing everything else I'm doing. Because now I'm running multiple companies and I can't be a CEO of 5 different companies at a scale that large. It's impossible with time constraint. So then now I got to fill those roles, right? So that's constant no matter what level of business you're at. But yeah, I would challenge you to do it. I think you'll find it useful, helpful, and then also will create a whole idea around what could actually be sustainable and also give you more time to where you're not having to, you could still be working 16, 18 hours a day, but the amount of movement you're making and the progress forward is a pendulum swing of a lot more productivity. Because most of the time we get caught doing the tasks that we're used to doing that have to get done. They do have to get done regardless.
Right.
We're not getting around them. But can I find somebody else that can do it just
Yeah.
as good as
I
me?
I feel like I do that, but not with a pen and paper. I feel like I self-analyze what I'm doing pretty constantly. And that's why I asked you about an editor, because to me, I think for editing my podcasts and stuff, it's kind of a low ticket item for me. It's editing is important and everything, but it takes a lot of time and I can spend my time doing other things. And so that's why I asked you for an editor because that is a big thing that I do need to do is move my time to more higher leverage things. And I'm constantly working on that, but it's just doing it more, I think. And yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it happens all the time, dude. I mean,
yeah,
I'm talking with CEOs that make millions of dollars a year and they still struggle with it.
yeah,
Because you just get caught going. And when you just don't see it. Same way when I was a professional athlete, I had coaches that couldn't do what I was doing, but they could see something I couldn't see.
right. Exactly.
It's just that same situation. And it used to be the funniest thing because I'd be like, dude, you're so out of shape. You couldn't even run down this field and not like pass out. But the advice you just gave me actually makes sense. And I did not see that. Like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like same kind of situation is what it does. Like I said, so it's literally everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see that. But I appreciate your time, man. I wish we had a little bit more, but I got to head over to another meeting. So
Yeah, brother. Absolutely, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
You got it,
much.
man. You got it.
Take care.
All righty.